Hello, this is Ed, and welcome to the next segment on the PartSim circuit simulator. In this segment, I'm going to use a more complicated circuit to illustrate a few things regarding probing. This circuit is a little bit too large for the screen. You can use the zoom buttons to zoom out and see it full screen, or use the sliders to zoom around. I currently have no probes on this circuit, so if I run a transient analysis, then the simulator will attempt to simulate all of the nodes in this circuit. Now that can be quite busy and sometimes just contains too much information. So I can use the Probes tab, which enables probes mode and allows me to probe certain nets. So I can probe the VNP, VNN, and Vout nets, which now adds 3 probes to my list. If I now run the simulator, then as expected I have only 3 outputs. Now in the case of the VNP and the VNN, we would actually kind of like the difference between those two. So we will remove those probes here and we'll add a voltmeter between those two. And run the simulation again. And now we see the difference input centered around 0 and the output, which is driving up to about only 1.06 volts. We currently have the current drive of our bipolar differential amplifier set to only 1 milliamp. If we boost that up to, say, 3, then our high voltages reach much higher, much closer to our sort of desired level. They're close to 3 volts. Continue to boost that if necessary. And that shows a little bit about how the probes work. The other thing that the probes can do is to probe currents. So we can actually probe the current across any 2-terminal device by just hovering over the 2-terminal device. You can also probe the current on the pin, which admittedly is probably a little difficult to identify. Here the cursor is a hand, here the cursor is an X. If I probe this particular pin on R1, then this will probe current into R1. If I probe this pin, it will probe current into the base of R1. So in this case, we probably want this particular probe point. If I now probe, or simulate rather, then not only do we get the output, but we also see the current. In this case, the current is mimicking the output just because the scaling on both sides has been matched, to each other. So we have on the current output we have 2.9 milliamps. If we hide the current output, then we have 2.93 volts. Since it's a 1K ohm resistor, these do match pretty closely. We can also probe 3-terminal devices for current. If we choose the probes option again, we are not able to hover over the 3-terminal device directly, but we can hover over the individual pins of that device. So for instance, we can measure the current on Q1 and the current into, say, the collector of Q4. And now we see, if we, let's say, disable some of the other values, this is the current probe on Q11 and Q12. So Q41 is our current here, and there's our current into Q12. So just a few of the options that are available with the current probes. One final method, another way to add probes would be to use this drop down and add them by name. So if we want to look at the emitter voltage, we can select the emitter and click add probe, and that adds to this list. We can always remove probes from this list by just clicking the X. And that concludes our look at the probe capabilities in the PartSim circuit simulator.